So we have to finish what we started, and we are going to follow the games of Magnus Carlsen till the end of this World Rapid Championship. So it's the start of day 3, and finally Carlsen is facing a formidable opponent, Daniil Dubov from Russia, a young and promising Grandmaster who has already been over 2700, and Carlsen has the black pieces. To add some backstory to this game, Daniil Dubov, it turns out, was one of the seconds for Magnus Carlsen during the World Championship match. For those who don't know what that is, that's basically an assistant that helps him with his openings. So at the moment he should know Carlsen's repertoire pretty well. So Dubov with white, he opened with c4, the English opening, e6. And Dubov, he's a very nice theoretician if you like to look at games and get ideas. He had a very nice game. I think it was against Nakamura in the Magnus attack, which is arises from the English opening. But in this game we have, well, Queen's Gambit declined, and now a semi-sluff. And after knight bt2, Carlsen makes it a stonewall by going f5. So stonewall is basically when black sets up this pawn chain. Black gets some space, but the obvious drawback of this setup is that white will get good control over the e5 square. Now Dubov goes for the fianchetto, g3, knight to f6, plays bishop to g2, bishop to d6, trying to add some presence to the e5 square. But Dubov goes into that square immediately. Now the problem, of course, with taking is, well, you've given up the black squared bishop, and you do have some weak dark squares. For instance, if I were to put my bishop on this diagonal, could be a problem for you. So in general, this is not a desirable trait. So Carlsen castles, and now b6, which is a more modern treatment of the stonewall, putting the bishop on b7, sometimes on a6. In the old days, they used to well, not play b6, and the bishop would usually travel through d7, e8, and then come to life on h5 outside the pawn chain. But b6 is considered a solid way to play the stonewall setup. Bishop to b7, and now Dubov takes on d5. In general, black would like to take here with the e-pawn and have a very solid position, but in this particular position that would hang the f5 pawn. So black takes with the c-pawn here. Knight d to f3, adding some power to the already established outpost on e5, but Magnus, he puts his knight into e4 given the opportunity. Now h4 is played by Dubov. A bit of prophylaxis, as otherwise black might have thought about maybe getting aggressive with g5, g4. But now that's off the cards. Knight d7 and bishop f4. So we see that white is doing everything he can to hold on to the stronghold here on e5. Knight d to f6. And Dubov, well, doubles on the c file. And in some cases he's ready to jump with the knight into c6. Carlsen played here bishop to a6. So he's tying down the queen to the defense of the pawn on e2. But that's easily fixed with rook f to e1. But now knight to g4. So Carlsen is getting aggressive here, putting two attackers on the pawn on f2. But Dubov doesn't panic. I mean, if he takes, then things get very hairy. Black could take on g4, even on f4. And yeah, if you take on g4, you're already in trouble because you have to move the knight somewhere. And now I can take on f2, probably with a knight. Otherwise you take on e4. So something like this. Yeah, I don't see anything but particularly wrong. But this is sort of one of the ideas in the position for black. But Dubov, he just played queen to a4, hitting the bishop. And it's not worth it to take this pawn, because I will just take your bishop. And even though you're into, well, enemy territory now, it's just one pawn and there are no further threats. So Carlsen has to retreat the bishop. And now knight to g5. And very unusual placement of the knights. Both sides have a knight inside sort of the demarcation line of his opponent. And they're symmetrical, you know, one on e5, e4, one on g5, g4. And I don't remember seeing this, well, in my career. So very unusual placement of the knights. So yeah, black can take here, but white has a stronger threat of taking on e6, which would hit both of these guys. So black has to react to that, and Carlsen took on g5. Now bishop takes, queen to e8. We have a queen trait, and white now takes on g4. So it's clear that white has a more healthy structure. Black has this double pawn here on the g file. And now a strong positional move by Dubov. He plays bishop to f4. And the idea is that he wants to trade this bishop for this one, which he manages to do. Black doesn't really have a choice, because otherwise the rook would immediately come into the c7 square if you try to avoid the trade. So black trades and contests the c file. But now white has an easy plan. King h2. And yeah, just putting the king here and attacking this pawn. And yeah, this is better for white. Carlsen is in trouble because he has a light squared bishop, as does white. But his problem is that he has many pawns on light squares, most likely this one as well. And this will both restrict his bishop and make the pawns a target. Meanwhile, white does have a lot of pawns on black squares, which is usually what you want to do with a light squared bishop. Carlsen brought the king into the game, king to g3. It also came into consideration to play maybe h5 here and then king g3 to attack the pawn. Different kind of position. Black can probably play g6 there. But he played king g3, h5, protecting the pawn. And now, after f3, liquidating with bishop takes f3. I was slightly surprised here that yeah, Dubov offered a draw, and Carlsen, of course, accepted. He's just slightly worse here. He can never play for a win. But white can, you know, relatively easily press a little bit here, although most likely the game would end in a draw with Magnus Carlsen's defensive skills. But yeah, a tough pairing for Carlsen, because, as he said after the game, it's tough to play somebody who, well, basically knows most, if not all, of your secrets. And yeah, he couldn't make anything happen with black, and in the end was, well, not lucky, but you know, white was the one who was pressing here, definitely. But okay, Dubov didn't want to press against his, you know, boss, I guess. you know, we have all these pawns on black squares. We can maybe, you know, maneuver the king, use a g file. In some cases, in some endgames, white can even play f5 and put the king on the f4 square. And even if you're down a pawn, you do have such a nice blockade that white can never lose this. But okay, a draw in the 11th round for Carlsen, and we'll move on to the next one.